What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Week 14 Late Round Fantasy Football Show. We're just trying to hold on. It's a pivotal week. We're trying to hold on, and honestly, if you look at the news, which we're going to talk about, you look at what happened in last night's game, but the news right now, it's all about a team that's not really relevant in the NFL, but it's certainly relevant for our lineups this week and maybe possibly even more. We'll talk about that team. We'll talk about some guys who are not going to be ready for this week and what that means for your lineups. Just hang on. We're almost there. It's the Week 14 Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Welcome in. It's the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. I'm David Kitchen, the COO, also the guy with the perfectly normal, healthy voice right now.
It is better. You feel, you guys hear this? You can hear. There's still a little bit going on there.
Yeah, you're doing a lot better. I do want to say this is by the way, this is JJ Zachariason. You might know him from the Late Round podcast.
Imagine being subscribed to the podcast feed, but not knowing who I am.
That's what someone said in the Discord that they didn't know. Like I think it was Mid Perspectives episode or whatever it was, that they didn't know which was which. Your voice has been a little weak this week.
What do you mean? What are you saying? Which was which?
They said they didn't recognize the voices and they thought something was up with their speakers.
You mean they couldn't recognize that I had a screwed up voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy to me because I mean even now you can kind of hear the rasp, but
no, I can hear it.
Especially yesterday's show was easily I think the worst that I had this week.
I referenced it to shaky Wi-Fi, like you're just kind of expecting it to go out. But you held on, just like people's Week 14 teams. I do want to say, though, I knew this was coming. Because when we were talking about the possible Gadula hire, and I was like, well, and what if you got like sick during a week? And you're like, well, I've never gotten sick.
No, it's not that I haven't gotten sick. I have podcasted through COVID.
Okay.
I have, like, I know it's inevitable that you will get knocked down.
Yeah.
But just like they say in tub thumping,
you get up again.
I'll get up again. Okay. You're never gonna keep me down. But no, so I know that I'm gonna get
you drink a whiskey drink and a vodka drink. Is that what it was?
Sometimes that helps.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps. But I have not missed a show in the season, aside from like holidays and stuff like that. I haven't missed a show in the 8 years that I've been doing the Late Round podcast. And I hope that continues for the next 30. I hope that I'm able to, I feel very lucky that even like when I had COVID at the peak of COVID, like, in like 2021 or whatever it was, that even then it wasn't bad enough that I couldn't podcast through it. It wasn't fun. Definitely wasn't fun, but I still did podcast through. I do want to read one comment on Spotify that we got today that I thought was just hilarious. It was from Jordan, and Jordan said, Kitch. So this is to you, right?
Okay.
Kitch, you couldn't fill in for your boy for one episode so he doesn't have to come on here sounding like Doc Rivers. It's very good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do not want me filling in. I am, I gotta say, I mean, my role is not to provide content. My role is to be the voice of the normie viewer, the normie listener out there. So it'd just be like normies leading normies, and nobody wants that.
I do sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. Like the worst part of the podcast for me is actually the delivery part of it, because the fun part for me is the research and coming up with answers and all that kind of stuff. I love it so much, but I'm all done with that by the time I go to record. So all I have to do is record. And when you're doing it solo, it's not nearly as fun. Like I love doing this show because you never know what's really going to pop up, and we're having a conversation and stuff. And when you're having a conversation with someone else, you're at least, there's this unpredictability to it where you're doing a show and you're like, I don't know fully what's going to happen. But when I'm doing the solo show, I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. So I kind of just wish I could hit a button that maybe AI in 5 or 6 years will, I mean, maybe even in just a year, I could just hit a button and it would have the same cadence and flow that it typically would. But look, I mean, by the end of me recording, I've talked to Kitchen about this. When I do the solo show, oftentimes I am sweating because it's just me. And obviously I cut stuff. So like, it'll be like 25 minutes for a 20-minute show or something like that. And my Aura ring will tell me that I've burned like 250 calories after doing a solo show.
You're like Ripken mixed with like Michael Phelps mixed with.
We don't need to go that far.
I'm just saying Phelps. It's like you have to eat your calories to prepare for your podcast because
you think it'd be easier to get rid of some of these LBs that I'm trying to get rid of right now.
Hey, you and me both. All right, this is a down and nerdy show. It's an interactive show. Here's my question. I'm not going to give out any names, but we got a message from the wife of a listener. And they are a hardcore fantasy football person. And she said, I don't know what to get this guy.
Yeah.
Can you help me out?
I don't know what to get him either.
Yeah. And so that's
maybe a late round prospect guy.
I mean, listen, that we talk about investing in something and something valuable, something to be of worth. Yeah, sure. But other than like an East Coast dad shirt or something, like what would you think? So here's the question, and you can answer it in the comments. You can answer it if you're listening to this later. What would be like a good gift for a fantasy football guy? And just put that in your bucket.
Ethan in chat says blood pressure meds, which is very fair. Very fair.
Honestly, would be good. But we'll probably be talking about that more in the Patreon. I'm guessing we'll have a whole discussion about it. Maybe JJ will go over his buckets thing at some point. And speaking of that, hey, join us in the Patreon. It's a fun time. You should subscribe to us on YouTube and like and everything else. But if you really want to be in the community, come hang out with us in the Patreon, and that's in the Discord, which is a part of Patreon. So again, interact with us, leave us comments. JJ, are you ready to get to the notes? Because it's really like very focused on one team.
Yeah, I have a feeling on what team that is, but yeah, let's get to it.
All right.
Today's fantasy news.
Okay, let's just go with first what happened last night.
Okay, you guys switch the tab over on the.
Oh, I thought I did.
Oh, there you go.
I had two tabs.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah,
let's
do that last night.
We have two tabs open. All right. So, as far as what happened last night, give your just overall assessment.
Well, Jahmyr Gibbs has been used a lot more as a pass catcher with Dan Campbell calling plays, which has been really good to see. Good for people who have Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's been nice. He's been dominating. Obviously, a really good matchup for him against Dallas this week. Dallas has been a lot better against the run, though, to be fair, since they made that move with the Jets. And so I do think that we should, like even Gibbs didn't have like that crazy of a rushing line last night. It was just all receiving and him getting more work through the air. Maybe that had something to do with Amon-Ra St. Brown not being 100%.
They said they're going to line him up at receiver.
Yeah, but look, ARSB didn't look that bad last night.
No.
I mean, he made that one play late where he looked like his normal self, which, I mean, props to him. That dude is incredible. So
I started him in my main, or I did not start him in my main home league, and I need a win this week, but I'm like, I just can't do it. So last night,
did you not reference the rankings, Kitchen?
I did, but it was
you had a feeling?
I had a feeling like I was like, what if he's just like an unlimited snap counts? Like and so when he was like catching those balls, I was like, all right, don't do anything too good. I don't want a bunch of.
I mean, he had a good outing, but he didn't find the end zone, so it wasn't like it was crippling for you. It's not like benching Gibbs or something last night. But yeah, like I thought Amon-Ra St. Brown looked good. Jamison Williams continues to be involved a little bit more, getting a little bit more of those crossing routes. I've said this before though. Okay. I said this on 10 Trends a few weeks ago. I think that a lot of people just assume that he's getting more of those routes, and he might have last night. I haven't looked into the data. It's not so much that he's getting more, it's just he's getting targeted on those routes. His ADOT is so much lower since Dan Campbell took over because they're actually targeting him on those routes. Remember, average depth of target is average depth of target, which means when they're actually targeted, that's what we're counting for the depth. It's not average depth of route. It's not how they're actually running. I would imagine his average depth of route maybe changed a little bit. I don't really know how you would measure that, to be fair, but I would imagine that that's changed maybe a little bit, but the depth of target is really what's changed a lot for JMO, because they are giving him closer to the line of scrimmage looks. And when you are getting targets closer to the line of scrimmage, your catch rate increases. There's more conversion. You're not just getting stuff down the field. That's a lot more difficult to, you can become more boom bust, which is exactly what we were seeing with JMO earlier in the season. So I think that's been good. So the Lions offense, big plus. Obviously, the big news from the game was CeeDee Lamb and that horrible concussion that he sustained, where he was in the fencing posture after he hit his head on the turf or on the ground in the end zone. And Ryan Flanoy stepped up and had a pretty good game from a receiving standpoint. I thought last night was George Pickens' worst game of the season in terms of just like general effort, if you will.
Yeah, that was the big, that's what you do not want heading into like the playoffs. You don't want any sort of drama, because the Cowboys have been relatively like drama free from Pickens.
Yeah, I mean, there's been like some random stuff, like he sat out that first drive when CeeDee Lamb sat out the first drive a couple games ago. What, against the Raiders, was it?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, I'll say this, and this is kind of like anecdotal, and it's just a little story, but I went on Twitter a couple weeks ago and I was talking about how the Steelers and how like the DK Metcalf trade, in my opinion, was just really bad. Like DK Metcalf was coming off arguably his worst season of his career, and they give him this huge contract, and they sent a 2nd round pick while getting a 3rd round pick for George Pickens. And, I was met with the typical, Steelers fan. It's so funny whenever I do that, as if like they don't realize that I grew up as a Steelers fan and like grew up in Pittsburgh and like know that city and culture just as well as they do. But regardless of that, a lot of people were coming at me just being like, George Pickens is a head case. They had to get rid of him and blah, 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 blah. And so naturally I logged onto Twitter this morning, and there was someone in my mentions talking junk because Pickens had that game. I'm like, how are you talking junk right now whenever DK Metcalf hasn't done anything since like week 5 or, their bye around that time. But regardless, like I think that yes, there is the off the field stuff with Pickens that sometimes translates to a lack of effort, like we saw last night. Like, could he have been a little bit more aggressive in getting some of the pass, even the one that was picked? Could he have been more aggressive in going after that? Yeah, of course. We'll see how he responds. We'll see if, the one thing with CeeDee Lamb being concussed is that he does get a little extra time because it was a Thursday night game.
Yes, but I saw someone saying that like if you just looked at past people that went through the fencing response, that like that's not good. Usually it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly look, whenever I say that, I'm certainly saying that I hope first and foremost that he is healthy, and it's not them like,
right.
I'm not putting fantasy first, but I am saying you have those extra 4 days. What we've seen recently, and I don't have the data, but it does seem like, 80 to 90% of the time when a player gets a concussion, he's out the next week. Like it's just that's the reality of where we're at right now. And that's good. I'd rather them, be on that side than aggressively put them back in the lineup. But if CeeDee Lamb is out, I would imagine George Pickens, we saw Pickens without Lamb earlier this season and he was a stud. And I would imagine he'd be pretty studly for fantasy purposes if CeeDee Lamb's out.
And this is where those 1st round buys are crucial with stuff like this.
Yeah.
If you have CeeDee Lamb. All right, let's get on to Arizona Spilled the Tea. Boy, we have, just a lot to talk about here. Trey Benson. Hey, let's open up the practice window and then not know if he's going to come back this season.
Yeah. So here's the thing with the practice window stuff. He technically, I think it closes on like the 10th. So I'm pretty sure they can activate him, and then he could technically play next week if they were to activate him. Okay,
but they haven't activated. That's the whole point.
Right. But what I'm prefacing this.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And if I'm wrong, like you guys can fact check, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at with Trey Benson right now. And I'm just saying that because a lot of people are asking if they should drop him. And you could, yes, like I know that I recommended him as a buy a handful of weeks ago as a highly, obviously a high variance buy because he was banged up. And they get Cincinnati in week 17. And so you got to basically like if there's one guy that I would roster outside of Trey Benson, is sorry, I was reading one of the comments. Never mind. But the one running back that I would roster outside of Trey Benson has to probably be Bam Knight at this point, because to me, Amari DeMarcado healthier now, he probably kind of clashes more in terms of usage with Michael Carter, which could come in handy this week because they play the Rams. There's probably going to be a negative game script. But Bam Knight, I mean, he's consistently seeing 60-ish% running back rush shares. He'll see some work through the air. That's kind of the direction that I would go in if you as the number 2 outside of Benson. If Benson's out, it would just be Bam Knight.
Okay, and then see, I was going to go through all of them. You're not even letting me go through all of them. There's
sorry.
Let's just okay. Benson, Kyler Murray not coming back.
Right.
On the IR.
Not surprising though. Not surprising.
Right. Not surprising. But like today they announced he's not coming back. If you got Kyler Murray on your redraft teams, feel free to drop him. And then you also have MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr. not playing this week. And the other surprise, Greg Dortch is out. And I see your response says Xavier Weaver season.
Yeah.
And when I saw you post this in the Discord, I thought, oh, honey, your sickness is getting to your head, because I didn't know you were talking about Cardinals. I thought you were saying Xavier Worthy. Like you said, this is low key a Xavier Worthy or a Xavier Weaver game. And I thought, oh,
I'm not being that serious, to be fair.
I know, but no, I thought that you were meaning to say Xavier Worthy. Most people don't know who Xavier Weaver is unless you bought the prospect guide.
So 2 years ago, he came out, Colorado, if I recall correctly. He's a smaller framed wide receiver who in college was able to do a lot of deep work. He actually had, I've changed the breakout score methodology a little bit year over year, but he actually had like an above average breakout score, which is not something that you typically see from like an undrafted type player. But he's probably going to run the second most routes at wide receiver for Arizona this week. He did have a hamstring injury, or not hamstring. He popped up with some injury. I'm thinking about Pat Bryant. He popped up with some injury on yesterday. And so I'm assuming that he's going to be good to go this week. So if he's not, then I don't even know where we're looking, at wide receiver I wouldn't look, honestly, at any other wide receiver. I wouldn't be looking at Xavier Weaver either, unless you're in a real, I might have to start him in an incredibly deep league. So don't judge me when I say that. It's a very, very deep league. But I really, in most 12-team leagues, you should not be looking at Xavier Weaver. But look, negative game script. They've been throwing it more than any other team in football. The Cardinals have. So there could be like a 6 to 7 target game, something along those lines for Xavier Weaver this week. And if that's the case, he might be a little bit usable.
Yeah, but other than Xavier Weaver, I mean, if you got Trey McBride or Michael Wilson on your team, just be blessed.
Trust me, buddy. I need, with my Trey McBride exposure in best ball.
Yeah.
And with the 49ers and Patriots being on a bye this week,
yes,
I need a legacy game from Trey McBride. It would be phenomenal.
All right. Speaking of T Higgins is back this week. Isn't it nice to have T Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow playing in a meaningful game? Isn't that fun?
The boys are back. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an okay matchup. I think T should be in your lineup, in most lineups, if you've got him. It's a little bit of a bump for Joe Burrow. This Bengals team, it's like, I feel like it's like deja vu from last year, where, they really, their offense was incredible down the stretch last year, and they were winning some games, but it was just too little too late. And that's where we're basically at right now. They can still get in though. They need like the Ravens to beat the Steelers, and then they need to be able to beat, Baltimore, all this kind of stuff. But they can still realistically get in. And it's not like Pittsburgh and Baltimore are trending in the wrong direction right now. So never say never. It's the NFL. We see crazy stuff happen all the time. And it's nice that they are competitive right now because, there's obviously some very, very big fantasy assets on that team.
All right, more Kincaid. We've got Dalton Kincaid, who we thought was going to come back possibly, but now his knee, he's dealing with a hammy, but now his knee popped back up on the injury report. So not sure if he's going to play this week.
Yeah, I think he was like limited again, maybe today, and they don't know exactly what's going to go on, with him. And so, if he does go, Cincinnati is an incredible matchup. They basically are allowing 3 times the amount of points per game to team tight ends above expected versus any other team in football. Like it's crazy how bad they've been against the tight end position. So if Dalton Kincaid goes, you got to play him. And then if he doesn't, I didn't mention this on the sleeper show. I should have added it as sort of an aside. Dawson Knox becomes at least some sort of streamer for you this week if Kincaid can't go.
All right, we've got Yaden Daniels. Daniels. No more Mariota. Do you want to set the record after hearing Mariota coming out and saying that is kind of how you pronounce his name? Because there's a little bit of back and forth on this week's waiver wire, or not waiver wire show, Living the Stream show.
Yeah, look, Mariota is how I would say it, but I know that they really want to stress the T. But here's the thing: when he answered that question, he was answering it for the A sound, not really for the T part.
Yeah.
He was answering it for the Mariota, not Mariota.
Which I always told you, it's Mariota and it's Kamara.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
And so it's Marcus Mariota, but he was stressing the T. And sure, I could say Mariota. Is that better? Yeah. Marcus Mariota.
When Denny was saying Minnesota, I was liking that. That was good. Okay. But Jaden Daniels, though, starting this week, and they obviously have Terry McLaurin now, like nice little offense too.
Yeah, he's a QB1 this week for me. I'll probably even bump him up a little bit more than I had him entering Thursday night. But yeah, I think that, when these injuries happen where it's not his throwing arm, it's not his legs, you got to hope that he's in game shape, but it hasn't been like that long. And so I'm not like overly concerned about him having setbacks. And this is another example of like we get people talking all the time this time of year where they're like, oh, is this team going to shut this guy down? In the end, you guys, these are professional football players and they want to play football. Like this is what they do for their job, and they don't want to just stop playing because they want to prove that all of these guys, in order to be in the NFL, you have to have a ton of confidence, and you have to have a pretty big ego and all of that, especially a quarterback, right? And these guys want to play. And so if he's healthy, he will play. It's no different than Joe Burrow. Like, I would hope that the Bengals are not throwing out Joe Burrow if he's 50% there. Similarly, I hope that Washington's not throwing Jaden Daniels out there if he's only 60% through this injury, because that would be really bad for a lot of reasons. But if he's healthy, he's healthy. If a player's healthy, you don't just not play him just because you're out of it, So he's going to play. I think he can be effective. It's not the best matchup in the world, but I don't, like you said, Terry McLaurin's back. They were playing in a dome this week. So it could definitely be worse.
Yeah. With the Joe Burrow thing, my arch nemesis in my home league, the guy, everyone's got that one guy you just want to beat and you talk trash, and he dropped Joe Burrow this season. And so I picked him up off the waiver wire. I had the most fab, and it's a super flex league. And so this week he's having to start like Alec Pierce at the super flex spot.
Yeah.
And I just kind of let him know.
Can't be dropping quarterbacks like that.
Just kind of let him know, hey, I don't know what happened, but thanks, man. Which he was thrilled about. But I was a little ticked because then it happened to me in the sense that someone picked up off the waiver wire. This is an active league. Someone picked up off the waiver wire Mike Evans yesterday or 2 days ago when it came out. And I was ticked that I did not think of that. That like
how did Mike Evans slip through the cracks?
Right. I was ticked.
That seems like a you problem.
It is. I was ticked at myself, JJ.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
But to that point, I put not so fast Evans sniper guy on the title here because he's not going to be playing this week.
Yeah, but I'm expecting him in week 15.
Yeah.
So if he's out there, you guys should be adding him. I haven't talked about him on 15 transactions because he's still rostered in like 60% plus of leagues. So
right.
I couldn't bring him up. But yeah,
but
I mean,
a lot of times what happens when you're adding players is like you're looking at the projections for that week. And so these guys aren't there.
Sure. Yeah. I do think that, so there was a point made by Hayden Winks. He sent a tweet out of expected fantasy points when all three of these guys were healthy. So Abuka, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. And basically, as you would expect, Abuka has higher expected fantasy points without these guys than with them. So it should hurt him, a little bit. Like, it's not like he's been doing that much recently anyway, but there is a little bit of concern for Abuka next week as Evans gets healthier. But I still think that Abuka can be like a 20% target share player in an offense with Godwin and Evans. Yeah. And like the problem with him has not been volume. It's just been efficiency and the ability to connect with Baker Mayfield. So I actually think that Abuka could still perform better than he has been over the last handful of weeks. It's almost hard for him to not perform a little bit better. But you should definitely be adding Mike Evans right now if he's out there. It's also good for Baker. Don't forget about that. If Baker's on your waiver wire, because he has been average. I mean, it was really funny. I was going through and I was looking at quarterback points per game. And I remembered just out of the blue that one of my bold predictions at the beginning of the season was that Trevor Lawrence was going to outscore Baker Mayfield in points per game, which was a terrible prediction in hindsight. But was it? Because right now, Trevor Lawrence is only 0.1 points per game behind Baker Mayfield, which is absolutely wild. So we'll see what happens there.
All right. Since you brought up Igbuka, we did just get a report from Dan Wiederer. Says Rome Odunze's status for Sunday in Green Bay seems very iffy at the moment. Will be interesting to see how the Bears handle things if he can't go.
I'll tell you how they'll handle things. It's going to be a Luther Burden season is what's going to happen.
Luther Burden the third. You better learn Luther Burden the third.
Yeah. I'm excited for Luther Burden. I'm not excited if Odunze misses though, because I need him for, personally for some teams and stuff. But he has not been on the same page as Caleb Williams. I said this in Discord today. It seems a little weird to me that people keep like giving the excuse and like keep making excuses for Rome Odunze despite the poor performances when they just don't do that for other wide receivers who would be in a similar spot. Obviously last year it's the coaching staff and the quarterback play and such. And sure. And the competition, because Keenan Allen and DJ Moore were there. Sure. I get it. Like, that's fine. I talked about all that on episode 990. You can go look at that, the gray area of fantasy football. But then this year it's like, okay, what exactly is the excuse right now? Is it that Caleb Williams sucks, that the route tree isn't great? And, I saw some really good analysis from Matt Harmon talking about how they're getting him in motion, and that's a lot to ask for. And like, he's a little bit like his timing on his routes is a little bit off because he's in motion and he's a younger player. So he's not totally in sync with what's going on with the offense. And then on top of that, obviously he's had this foot injury, and I'm not saying that Rome Odunze is a bad player at all. It's just interesting to me that there are these excuses that exist. And I really want to just see Luther Burden featured a little bit more and running, like they've been getting Rome more involved in the slot recently. They're moving him around a bit and the production just hasn't been there, like period. Yeah. It just hasn't been there. And I want to see what Luther Burden can do with similar opportunity.
Same. The other issue is that like they're winning, so like they're,
it's the run game though. The run game's cooking right now. For Chicago,
which is not great for the other fantasy part. It's like when the Eagles running game is cooking. It's like kind of sucks for everybody involved.
I mean,
in that
my
game.
my 14% Kyle Monunga is not.
Yeah. All right. When you like, let's say that Rome continues this trend, are you going to go back to that Reddit thread and just put C?
No, of course not. I would never do something like that. No. No, look, the whole Rome Odunze, Emeka Egbuka thing, I called it, close to a 50-50 thing back in May. And I went with Egbuka because I thought that it was a good reroll situation. And right now, if you look at most dynasty rankings, Keep Trade Cut has Egbuka at wide receiver 9, Odunze wide receiver 16. People are sick of me talking about this. I'm not going to dig into it deep, but I do think that it's a really good, because there was another trade in that same exact email, by the way, where I had traded Jaden Reed and both Colts quarterbacks for Bo Nix. And I think there might have even been a draft pick involved. And in hindsight, it's really not as lopsided as everyone just assumed it was when it first happened, because Daniel Jones hit, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like we should evaluate all trades just based on the result, because we shouldn't. The process is just as important. But I do think that it's just a good example of like why I did that gray area of fantasy football episode in the first place, is that none of this stuff is as black and white as you think it is. And it never will be, even with really good players. And so I think it's important to have that in mind as we, discuss all this stuff and as you think about your own fantasy teams.
All right. Is the battery charged? This is a Chargers post because you got Justin Herbert, who is on track to play. But what does that mean? Also, what's it going to be with Amari and Hampton this week as well? So and Quentin Johnson also has popped up on the injury report. He wasn't practicing yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no Jalen Carter for Philly, and that's really big because the last time I think there's been 2 games. This is all from memory, so I could be wrong.
Was Cowboys a game?
Cowboys in week 1.
Yeah,
because he had the penalty at the very beginning. He got ejected at the beginning of the game, and then Javonte Williams had a good game, and then the other one was, if I remember correctly, was the Giants game, another primetime game. And then this will be a primetime game, but the other one was the Giants game. And that's when Cam Scadaboo went bonkers and just ran all over them. And so this is a huge injury for the Chargers, because you have Justin Herbert coming off that surgery. He's banged up and you probably don't want him to throw that much. Oh, by the way, this big body in the middle of your defensive line is now out. And so they should be able to run the ball more, or at least better than they otherwise would be able to be able to run. And so, hopefully Amari and Hampton gets involved. I think if Hampton plays this week, we're going to see maybe like a 60-40 situation. Yeah, it's going to be pretty split. But then if Amari and Hampton shows us what he's capable of doing, then I think next week in the fantasy playoffs, we're going to feel better. And I think that's a huge deal if we get Hampton this week, because then we can be confident enough in knowing what that workload might look like for Hampton in this single elimination tournament in the fantasy playoffs.
Hampton said this morning regarding the running back split with Kamani Vidal, me and him definitely going to be special.
You know what's fun about this is that both guys I liked as prospects, and I'm very happy for both of them.
And they're good, they're good guys too.
They seem like good guys, yeah.
Okay, this next thing is just 9.
I mean, that he's back.
He's back. He's out of concussion protocol. And we say all the time, it can't get any worse. And I think we said that last week. It can't get any worse with Max Brosmer.
I mean, it did. I didn't think that
Don't say it didn't, because if you are a JJ owner.
The result was definitely worse.
Yeah.
But it was like his mistakes were exemplified a little bit more than what we see with JJ McCarthy. I'm just going to say this: wait for the bold predictions piece for us to talk about JJ McCarthy.
All right. Quoth. Someone said, "What is Quoth?" In the comments, and I will just say, just go back and read some Edgar Allan Poe, because Quoth the Raven, maybe. This is a Lamar Jackson headline though, because he might not play this week.
Yeah, I don't even know anymore is my reaction to anything Baltimore. Talked about Lamar on the mailbag today. I don't think you can drop him, but at this point, now that we have even more information since when I recorded that show, I would argue that you probably are not going to start him this week. I'm going to bump him down even more. I don't know if you can confidently rank him as a QB1 right now. Just given the injury and given how he's performed over the last few weeks. And if he goes off, and you at least know that in the fantasy playoffs, he could give you that production. But right now it's just really tough to trust.
We were talking a little bit in the chat, and I said, if I ask you, is he the most kind of annoying player from just a fantasy perspective this year? Because it's like he's off, he's on, you feel like you have to start him. It's almost like a poison pill. It's just been rough with him this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that of my in season. It sounds like he's going to play today, by the way, literally a minute ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Lamar will be in. But again, I think that there's risk involved. We'll see where I have him ranked. I think I can tell you right now that before this all happened, I had him right below Jaden Daniels at QB 12 this week. And I think Daniel's going to move up a little bit, but I have them kind of in like the Brissett tier, in that area, more highly volatile than a guy like Brissett. But yeah, I mean, I look back and I think back on some of the 15 transactions advice that I gave this year, and I'm pretty pleased with a lot of it. But by far, the biggest miss of my season was the Lamar buy transaction.
Well, just like falling knife kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would have changed my process either.
Right.
That's the problem, is that like it just didn't work out, and he was not as healthy as I thought he would be coming back. But yeah, it's a rough situation if you have Lamar Jackson.
All right, let's move on.
Today's data.
All right, what do we have here, JJ?
So I talked about this on the 10 Trends episode this week, where wide receiver, it just sucks this year. It sucks. I've often found getting feedback from players, especially now that we have the Discord and stuff, and I've chatted with them for the last few years. I've found that a lot of fantasy managers look within only the scope of their one individual player that they have.
Yeah.
And they're like, this wide receiver is not performing well. I can't, and they'll name a guy who's been like fine within the context of the position. And I think that this really sheds light to that. If you have wide receivers that have been struggling, you're definitely not alone, because there's only been like 8 or 9 wide receivers who have been pretty consistently good throughout the season. And you could even argue some of them, like a Nico Collins, has been more of a roller coaster than you would like. But what I did was I looked at these different sort of lines in the sand of different wide receiver thresholds by points per game through the years since 2011. So I looked at the wide receiver 6, the wide receiver 12, the wide receiver 18, the wide receiver 24, 30, and 36. And I showed how many points per game those wide receivers had in that individual season. So for instance, in 2012, the wide receiver 18 scored 14.5 PPR points per game. Okay. The wide receiver 24 that same year, 13.6, and so on. So as you move left to right with this chart, with this table, you're going to get lower and lower numbers because those guys are ranked lower and lower, right? So in 2025, what I noticed was that the top 6 wide receivers, so wide receiver 6 this year, is scoring 18.9 PPR points. When you look at the last 15 seasons, including this one, you'll find that ranks 6th out of the last 15 seasons. So it's an above average season for the top wide receivers. JSN, Rashee Rice, obviously crushing it, Puka, etc. They're all looking pretty good. But then you look at the wide receiver 12. The wide receiver 12 right now is AJ Brown. He's averaging 14.7 PPR points per game. That's the second lowest that we've seen over the last 15 years. Then you look at wide receiver 18, 13.4 PPR points per game. That's Wan'Dale Robinson, I believe. That's dead last. That is the worst wide receiver 18 that we've seen since 2011. You go down this list. The wide receiver 24 ranks 14th out of the 15 seasons. The wide receiver 30 ranks 13th. And then the wide receiver 36 is 12th. Now, I'm not here to give you guys the answer as to why, because I don't have time to dig into the answer as to why. I'm simply giving you the descriptive data to show that wide receivers are doing this right now. I think there's going to be reasons that some of you guys are listening right now and you're like, oh, this is why I believe this is happening. There are going to be reasons. I just have not sat down and really dug into it. And I don't want to say something that I haven't really dug into enough because that's just not my style. So this is what's happening though at wide receiver. And this is another thing, like if you have JSN, if you have one of these high-end Amon-Ra St. Brown, whoever, like one of the guys, Drake London, when he's healthy, if you have one of those wide receivers, you've been gaining such an edge over your competition with those spots that if you have more average running backs and average tight ends or whatever on your team, like those guys are massively helpful right now, in fantasy football. So I think an easy way to look at this too is if like you look at your best ball exposure, if you did play, a number of best ball lineups, because a lot of people only have like 2 or 3 managed season long league teams. If you look at your best ball exposure and you're having a good season, check and see if you got a lot of JSN. Check and see if you got a lot of Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua And I bet you probably did. I bet you that's one of the because you nailed, or George Pickens, right? Because you nailed the wide receiver that is actually giving you that edge, and you didn't go after, or maybe you faded like a Zay Flowers type who just isn't giving you that kind of ceiling, right? And so it's pretty interesting to see how that the top of the group is performing this year.
Someone said that, it's like when you think about your receivers, you're just hyper focused a lot of times on what you have.
Yeah. And like someone in chat is saying grabbing running backs in the early rounds this year was my play and it worked out well. Yeah. I think that once August hit, if you listen to some of the shows that I did with people and such, other analysts bringing this up just as much as I did, but like this idea that you could easily go running back and pound wide receiver or even get Trey McBride in the third, because the wide receivers in that like round 4 and 5 range were really, really good. Like, and we all knew some of them were going to pan out and we were going to feel pretty good about them. Obviously JSN was more of the third round guy. And then, George Pickens has panned out.
Well, JSN, Devontae Adams.
Right. And we were actually talking about this earlier today, how I'm really, one thing that I am very happy about, as mad as I am about like the Lamar Jackson recommendation, the wide receiver recommendations in the draft guide were pretty on point with these guys, because it had Drake London, it had Devontae Adams, George Pickens was another one. And then, JSN, I ranked a couple of spots above ADP. And so hopefully like that helped too. But yeah, like I have teams with Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane right now that are just absolutely annihilating and destroying.
Or Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's even better, right? And so the other thing too, like I think a really, really good example of a player that you could just look in the silo and be like, this guy's underperforming, but actually in the grand scheme has not been that bad. Teteroa McMillan is probably the such a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Where like, no, he hasn't been this like massive league winner. He's definitely gotten better, but he hasn't been this massive league winner. But at the same time, he has not been nearly as bad as you probably think, like nearly as bad compared to the rest of the position this year.
Really curious how KL. Really curious how much the kickoff changes affected the scoring.
Probably a good bit.
Probably a decent bit, and it might be interesting to have some sort of study in the off season, JJ.
Yeah, I'm sure that's coming. I'm sure it's coming.
Put it down. Let's put it down. Now that we've got an extra toy in the closet, we can have that stuff with. With
like
Mr.
I said,
Padula.
like obviously that's crossed my mind plenty. With the field position stuff, I don't want to talk about something that I haven't researched in depth, and I just don't have time right now to research that stuff in depth.
Yeah, like the Chimere DK stuff. You see that he leads the league in all-purpose yards.
Yeah, he's a great returner.
Yeah, exactly. And someone in my group chat said, "Hey, I'm pretty sure that has to do with the kickoff role." I was like, "Yeah, pretty sure it does too." All right, that's why we did not hire him for our senior analyst role. All right, let's get on to it.
The late round main event.
All right, these are players you like more of the consensus this week, where I started with Jacoby Brissett, and I'm guessing the injuries do not affect the ranking at all here.
I mean, it might a little bit, but I'm still probably, because I think it'll affect the consensus ranking as well. I'll probably still be a little bit higher on him. I mean, we saw him still be usable without Marvin Harrison Jr. whenever he missed time with the appendectomy. So I'm not like massively concerned. Since becoming starter, he's been QB 7, 12, 10, 9, 4, 7, and 10. I have my QB 9 this week, consensus QB 12. Arizona has the highest pass rate over expected in the NFL. They should be throwing the ball a lot against the Rams because LA obviously can stop the run, and they're projected they're big favorites, the Rams are, in this game. So I could see a good negative game script, a lot of passing. I think Brissett is still a pretty strong play.
They just need to be losing, basically. You don't want a close game if you're starting any of these guys. You want garbage time. Just don't look at Brissett's stat line like in the first half.
Yeah, just go to the fort. Just wait till the game's over.
Wait till the game ends, please. All right, you got Travis Etienne as your running back.
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, like all four of these this week, the positions that I'm higher on, the players that I'm higher on in each position, I don't feel great about three of them. Like Travis Etienne's one of them. I don't really know why I'm 3 spots higher than consensus this week, but it's a middle of the road matchup by adjusted points allowed. last week we did see his peripherals drop, but I think part of that was probably game script driven and just the general vibes of that blowout against Tennessee. I do think there's a little bit of recency bias probably going on with this ranking because he had 5 PPR points last week, but in his 4 straight before that, he had 15 plus PPR points. So I don't mind ETN. I'm not going to like scream from the rooftops that like I'm so much higher on him this week, but I am a little bit higher on him.
All right. What about his teammate and cover boy for this week's late round fantasy football show, Jacoby Myers?
I do like Jacoby Myers a lot. That's probably the one player on this list that I feel pretty good about as long as Parker Washington is sidelined, which I think is a true 50-50 right now. Maybe you can look up and see if he's.
I think I saw where he was practicing or expected to practice.
He had a limited practice yesterday, but then Liam Cohen came out today and said basically like, if he's out, De'Ami Brown will step up and this guy will step up. So like, I don't know, the coach speak wasn't necessarily all rosy for Parker Washington, but Jacoby Myers, man, 27%, 20%, and 24% target shares over his last 3, 11, 15, and 21 PPR points. Sauce Gardner, I'm assuming he's out this week. Out. Yeah. So him being out, it's a better matchup for him on paper. The Colts have been really bad at stopping wide receivers in general. And I like the rapport and I like what I've seen from Jacoby Myers with Trevor Lawrence. So I think Myers is like one of those players right now that we have a little bit of an anchoring bias with him because he played so poorly with Vegas, but he's actually been kind of good in Jacksonville because he's a good wide receiver.
Yeah. Just needed some sort of offense there. All right. This one is kind of like hold your nose, JJ, because you got the tight end and you've got Colby Parkinson. You've got him ranked tight end 19, consensus tight end 23.
It's dart throw range, right?
Yeah, I know. To me, it's like I didn't really have a tight end. So
I'm looking at my tight end rankings. I'd say anything after like 16 or 15 is just total dart throw, hope for the best. That's what we're hoping for with Colby Parkinson. He had a 19% target share though last week. There's a high team total for LA. There's a top 10 matchup in both adjusted points allowed and target share allowed to tight ends. So putting it all together, maybe he finds the end zone. He's been like top 12 over the last month in end zone targets too at tight end. He has a couple of them.
All right, let's get to your bold predictions.
Have you seen these yet?
No, I have not.
Oh, that's fun.
Because whenever I checked the document, these weren't there yet. So you got RJ Harvey, top 5 running back. I'm not even going to scroll to the other one in my other tab because I want to be surprised.
So I know I voiced concern about RJ Harvey's playoff schedule on 15 transactions, but that's kind of why I was like, I essentially said, don't force it. I'm just letting you know that the schedule is not very good and his usage from a snap share perspective is not ideal yet and right now, right? So it could go in a lot of different directions. But this week is not where the schedule is bad. This week they get Vegas. That's a top 5 matchup for running backs by adjusted points allowed. Denver's a big favorite. There's some coach speak from Sean Payton basically saying like, you haven't seen what RJ Harvey's capable of yet. Some of that kind of vibe. But he has a 65% running back rush share, 9% target share over the last 2 games, almost identically. Like that's basically what you have to project based on what we've seen over the last couple of games. So I could see this week being a pretty good RJ Harvey week, despite the fact, he scored twice last week. One of them was one of the most tilting fantasy experiences of my life.
I don't know.
We won't get into that. Yeah, we don't need to get into that.
If you were in the live game banter channel in Discord,
Oh yeah. It was just not fun for a lot of reasons. But like I has nothing to do with me as an analyst. It's literally my individual leagues. And then people are like, it's more of like the Leo DiCaprio, like one of us meme, like when I get,
he tilts as much as I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, look, I tilt. I want to win. I'm very competitive. I want to win my fantasy leagues. And when things don't go my way over overtime, it's tilting. It's very frustrating. But yeah, RJ Harvey this week, I need him this week too. So now I'm on the RJ Harvey train. But top five running back. Look at your face with this next bold prediction.
Next poll prediction for the audio listeners. I am in shock right now because it's Minnesota drops 30 points on offense.
Yeah, man, you got to go with some vibes-based predictions sometimes, although the vibes are pretty down with the Minnesota offense. Look, they're at home. They're in a dome. Washington is top 8 as an opponent for every main position in fantasy football. I know that's just fantasy, but it goes to show how bad they are defensively and how porous they can be defensively. What if JJ McCarthy comes back and he's a little bit, he's just got a little bit more juice and he's just ready to go. And they post a 30 burger.
It's Friday, and it feels like Freaky Friday with us like just swapping positions right now with the
I'm just saying, man. I'm just
what
saying.
ifs. You never know. Love a little. All right. Speaking of look ahead waiver wire, he's first on your list. I know it's by position, but
Yeah,
JJ McCarthy,
JJ McCarthy's
9.
first on the list as a look ahead waiver wire because they get Dallas next week. Dallas is, I mean, if there's one defense to get right with, it's the Dallas Cowboys. So JJ McCarthy against Dallas is the first one. As I get to the next one, I'm going to take a swig of my water out of my giant
Okay. So people don't know, you got so tilted that
Good.
you threw out your water jug, Mo Alley Cox, which was the water jug's
I did.
name.
So this is how, like, I was
broke
composed enough. I was composed enough to look at my wife while we were watching the Sunday Night Football game, and I said, Amanda, I said, I need to throw something. And I go, and she goes, what? And so I grab my jug and I open my back porch.
She takes the kids and just holds them.
Yeah, the kids were sleeping. And I take my jug and I just chuck it outside because I just needed some, you just need something to throw sometimes.
Yeah, it's healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I wasn't going to do anything like really stupid. And so I just got up, grabbed it off the counter. My backyard is pretty patio based, right? It's got pavers and stuff. And I just chuck it and I just hear it hit. And I immediately know that Mo Alley Cox died, which is what we call the jug. And so I got a brand new one in the mail. Don't worry, guys. And it's green. It's pretty, isn't it? This is Darnell Washington, this jug.
That's awesome. All right. So you've got Tyrod Taylor against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers. These are not this week, but next week. That's why we're looking ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like Tyrod Taylor against Jacksonville should be fine enough. Aaron Rodgers against Miami. I'd feel best about Tyrod Taylor of those three. But yeah, I mean, I'm not like really chomping at the bit to like put them in my playoff lineup,
All right. What do handcuffs mean? Are those running backs or quarterback handcuffs?
Running back handcuffs is next.
Okay.
So get all your running back handcuffs, but non-handcuffs that aren't as obvious. Chris Rodriguez, he's getting more work on the ground. He's basically their early down guy. Bam Knight and Amari DiMercado, talked about them earlier. Devin Singletary, we don't know that much about Tyrone Tracy because they're on bye this week, but he did have that like stinger, like hip injury or something, against New England. Keaton Mitchell, who is a handcuff, but also is getting a little bit more work, just a little bit. And he's obviously explosive. And then at wide receiver, Jaden Higgins is still out there in over 50% of leagues. He's been doing well. Kayshon Boutte came back last week, scored a touchdown, and saw like 75% of the team's routes. AD Mitchell crushing it. Talked about him like 8 times on the show this week, so I don't have to get into that. Same with Devon Vele. He's still out there in a lot of leagues. Luther Burden, I mean, broken record. I get it. Yeah. But now that Adunze has this foot issue, I mean, he's had this foot issue to be fair.
Right.
Now that it seems like it's coming to a head, I feel like we might see a little bit more Luther Burden. You definitely want to be ahead on Luther Burden. I think of all these players, I mean, maybe like an AD Mitchell aside, but of all these players, I think Luther Burden is the most intriguing if Adunze does not go, because we could hypothetically see a breakout. And if that happens, like you want to be a week ahead, because that's going to be a blow your fab kind of situation with Luther Burden. Ryan Flanoy after last night with CeeDee Lamb, and then Pat Bryant, who hopefully goes. He had a hamstring issue, is limited, but we'll see with Pat Bryant. Harold Fannin, they get Chicago next week. He's still out there in 61%.
Crazy. He's only rostered in 39%.
I know. Well, he's getting a lot of volume, but he hasn't had that huge ceiling, and that's why people I think are not as into getting Fannin.
Darren Waller Tennessee this week too.
Yeah, Darren Waller 37% rostered right now. They get Pittsburgh next week, and then they get Cincinnati. And then on defense, the Jags get the Jets next week. The Bears get the Browns. I like the Bears and the Browns. That's who I've been stashing in some leagues. And then the 49ers get the Titans. That's also a pretty good matchup. But I think Chicago, playing for something, against Cleveland, and Cleveland's still been a pretty great defense or offense to stream against. That probably would be the pick. They'll probably end up being the 15 transactions defense next week.
Yeah, that's good. And then 49ers could get blown out though. You just never know. Like if you're going by vibes, they could get blown out by the Titans next week.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a bold prediction that I make next week. If you're going with JJ McCarthy scoring 30 this week,
beat the 49ers next week.
Yeah. Like, is that any crazier than saying JJ
the 49ers
McCarthy?
Coming off a bye?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just merely pointing out that bold prediction of the Vikings, I'm not sure I can get past that.
Someone said JJ needs to go in one of those rooms where you can smash things.
Yeah.
Look, it wasn't like that, guys. Okay.
No.
It was just it was a very I said, you got to be kidding me whenever he scored the touchdown in overtime. And then I got up off the couch and I just looked and I saw the jug and then I looked at Amanda, my wife, and I said, I need to throw something. And I just grabbed it and threw it out the back door. Probably woke up a neighbor as it hit the pavers.
Okay. All right. Let's get on to the end of today's show. All right. We got the quad box, which we have to choose 4 games. And I'm not going to choose Titans against the Browns because honestly, who wants to watch that?
Yeah, we're not doing Titans Browns.
No. I'm going to put Bengals Bills first.
Bengals Bills is a really good one. Yeah. So Bengals Bills is one of the quad box games. I'm going to go with because it's a really good real football game, I think. Like it's got a lot on the line. I'm going to go with Bears Packers as my top one.
I don't know if you heard the Swolecast that I'm on this week, but in the overview, Pete made a joke about Patrick Carrain, our buddy, who has been on the show before.
Yeah.
Rostering both defenses.
What was the background of that?
Okay. So Patrick Carrain won $2 million 3 years ago.
Yes.
And in the underdog best ball millionaire. And he was being chased by a bunch. This is week 17. So in best ball, everyone's stacking these week 17 games and everybody's stacking this Bills and Bengals game. And so you had a lot of teams in the final that were chasing him.
DeMar Hamlin game. And
the DeMar Hamlin game happened and they just shut it down.
Right.
And so these people that were chasing him, they didn't get any.
He would still have been the favorite though, right? Even if they played out that game.
There were some, there were some early scores, and I don't know if he was the clear-cut favorite at all.
But he was, but it was still, it's not like he would have definitely lost.
Right. No, it's not like he's definitely lost, but like when you go from you just think of like one player who scores like 1-2 touchdowns and moves you down like 4 or 5 spots. You go from winning 2 million to like 100,000, which hey, I'll take.
Right.
I'll take, but still.
Yeah. So now we got Bills. I didn't even think about we got the Bills Bengals again.
Yeah.
This week.
All right. You chose Bears Packers.
Yep.
And I'm not going to choose Commanders Vikings. I think I'm going to go with you know what? I
know what you're going to do. You're going to go Texans Chiefs because you always take Chiefs.
I'm going to go with Eagles Chargers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just kidding. I'm going Texans Chiefs.
Oh,
I do like Texans Chiefs. This whole narrative, so this season being tilted on its head with like the Chiefs possibly missing the playoffs, the Bills also being behind looking in, like it's kind of fun and kind of crazy.
Reasonable. This is a reasonable game for.
There's a bunch of good games.
I'm gonna go with every year we get a good one. Seems like what I'm gonna say.
Chargers Eagles.
Steelers Ravens. Steelers Ravens.
Oh, gross,
dude! Steelers Ravens is.
We just talked about Lamar.
One of the best rivalries in the NFL.
Yeah, sure. If you like 13-10 games,
I'm just saying.
You like 30 carries from the King for 2 touchdowns.
I think there's going to be some drama in this game, and there's going to be a lot of Yinzers that are probably going to be upset. It's going to be really fun to watch.
All right. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Well, again, the comment I want you to leave is, what is the perfect gift for a fantasy football guy? Just take into account what's the perfect gift for a fantasy football guy.
Yeah.
And we'll read the answer on next week's show. We'll come up with something, and we'll give away a draft guide or something to the winner.
Yeah. Yeah, come up with some good ideas. Also, you can come up with some ideas for my wife. That would be helpful. I'm just kidding.
For your wife, like for you to get your wife?
Yeah, for me to get. Actually, I'm the pain in the butt every year because I never have anything on my list for Christmas. So I'm
Honey,
the one.
I've got everything I want in you.
Yeah, I don't need. What else do I need? I got enough Dickies tees. I don't need any more of those. I'm good.
A few more pullovers.
Yeah.
All right. You have any final thoughts, JJ?
No. Hope everyone. First off, thank you guys for putting up my voice this week. I know it's a lot better today, but it was really rough and it was hard to record and all of that. And so hopefully the flow of the shows were fine. I just appreciate it. I also appreciate the feedback we've gotten all year and just the camaraderie of the season. I know that the next month is going to be very, very stressful for your fantasy teams and for your hobby. And it is for all of us. I will definitely be having like a tilt fest again. Hopefully I don't throw this jug and lose that one, but I get it. I'm there with you. And I hope that I can at least, finish this thing off and give you guys help you guys get a fantasy title. And hopefully the advice has helped throughout the season too. So just appreciate all of you guys for tuning in.
JJ, it's helped me. That's all you need to know.
Oh, there we go.
It's helped me. And again, my advice to everybody else, just hang on. Just hang on. Week 14. Hopefully, if you've got Drake May, I've got a lot of Drake May teams. You got Christian McCaffrey. You got these teams out there. Just hang on and try to scrap your way to the fantasy playoffs, and then you never know what's going to happen. So on behalf of JJ, I'm David, and we just thank you so much for supporting us, and make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time, week 15 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Peace.